Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
That's good. Yeah. Thanks for joining. No? How's everyone doing? Last 2 weeks of the quarter, no? Is that correct? Last 3 weeks, I think. It's a short quarter. So I'm sure you guys are very busy right now. So I'm pretty sure. So anyway, this session might be a bit longer, no, than the past sessions because, as you probably noticed, Module 4, as you know, is quite long. So I'll try to cover the first two topics, agri and fiscal, public finance and taxation. I plan to end at 7. I also have something else at 7 p.m. I have an appointment at 7. So we'll end by 7. So we'll cover as much as we can. I think we'll get through it. So the usual, I'll go through some announcements first. And then we'll jump to the actual modules. So as you know, what I do is I basically do some sort of a recap of the modules that I expect you've sort of covered already, or the topics you've covered already. So, and provide some more elaboration because some of these concepts are really quite new for you. No? That's why I think some people are saying they're overwhelming. No? And especially you guys are not economics majors. And for some of these topics, actually, even economics professionals, these are still topics that are quite complex as well. So let me just share my screen. Let's try to proceed already, no? Because again, mahaba yung session natin today. I think I'll try to stop at certain points and ask you guys questions so it becomes more interactive, no? Rather than me just talking to you. Share screen. All right. All right. You can see it, no, guys?
Yes, sir. We can see.
So again, okay naman, no? You guys can see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, at any time, if I'm choppy, if you don't see anything. Oh, by the way, sorry, I'll share the link to everyone. There's the PDF of this deck. No? So there you go. All right. So at any point, just stop me. No? If you have questions. Again, if you don't have questions, I will assume that you don't have questions. So I'll just continue proceeding. And stop me if you think I'm going too fast or I'm not explaining a topic fully. No? All right. So a few announcements again. Let me just get my laser pointer here. Okay. So we'll end with Module 5. No? I haven't uploaded it yet. I haven't published it yet. I plan to publish that by Sunday or Monday. No? I promise you, Module 5 will be very short. It's sort of a wrap-up. And expect more topics like the one in Module 1 where we sort of had an introductory piece on the role of the private sector in development, or SDGs. So we'll discuss more topics there. No? So it will be a very short. You can probably cover it in one day. No? So yeah, in case you're not finished with Module 4 yet by Sunday. So it will be, because I know that the week after next will be your finals week. So our last synchronous session will be next week. So it's really a weird school year. Right? A quarter seems very short compared to semesters. Obviously, it's half. So, but again, if you have questions, especially if you need some help, especially with your NSTP final output, which is also the same output for this class, no? The final one. Let me know as well. My consultation hours are the same. All right. So again, just to reiterate, I've gotten queries from both classes, no, from section D and my other class every Wednesday. Just to reiterate, assignment 2 is different, no, from the final integrated output. I discussed that weeks ago, so I hope that that's clear already. So I responded to those who asked. But just to reiterate, assignment 2 really is different. Assignment 2, I assign different policies, different laws or bills, and that's assignment 2. The final integrated output, that's related to your communities in NSTP, the livelihood review. But the groupings are the same because take this as practice of group dynamics. No? I hope you're gelling well as a group, so that for your final output, which is 30%, you'll do a better job. No? You'll have better teamwork. So based on the poll results, no, some students were saying, sir, wag na lang yung video, or the outputs are ano. So based on that, I don't remember if it's this class or the other class, might have been this class. So I did a poll and you guys answered it. No? So no more videos, okay? Paper only. Same limits apply, 10 pages max. If you can do it in less, you can cover the topic and all the guide questions I provided in less than 10 pages by all means, not including references, by the way. But I expect you in the discussion boards, again, online participation, discussion in Canvas accounts for 20% of your grade. So I expect you to react to at least one paper. Of course, not your own topic. That's kind of obvious. So instead of October 19, I'm giving you guys more time because I know you guys are really juggling different requirements for different classes. So I think I changed this already in Canvas. The assignment used to be October 18, di ba, in the beginning. But then someone alerted me, sir, bawal pag Sunday. So I changed it to Monday, October 19. But now, to give you guys more time, October 21. I don't
Thank
want to
you.
push it further.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to push it further kasi you might wait until the last minute and that will also coincide with your other assignments. So I will be pushing this to Wednesday next. That's the final extension. And then I'll give you guys more time to read your classmates' papers. No? So I close the discussion board. I'll upload everything again. I close the discussion boards on October 29. I think that's the Friday of the exam week. But you know, I mean, just to be frank with you guys, no, and I think one or two people actually voted for um, paper plus you guys randomly or all of you will be presenting a 5-minute summary. Actually, if you think about it carefully, no, that will actually be easier for you because instead of having to read 10 pages of a policy review, you'll just be listening to a 5-minute presentation and then you'll do your reaction. So if you think about it, if you've thought about it carefully, that's actually easier for all of you. And don't be afraid of presenting. I offered you guys something to practice how to synthesize things in 5 minutes and present it to your classmates, but no takers. No? But in the future, you know, especially this is a very useful skill, especially you guys are management students. This will be a very useful skill for your other subjects as well as your career. Communications, a lot of companies put a premium on ability to present, to communicate. So I offered that opportunity to you guys, but ayaw nyo. So it's okay. So if you think about it really, no, that would have been easier. Kasi instead of reading 10 pages of one topic, you listen to a 5-minute presentation and then that's it. And I was offering you guys just bullets, no fancy PowerPoints or anything. Again, if you guys, you know, go back to me and tell me, "I sir, we changed our mind, blah blah blah." Just let me know as soon as possible if you still want to change our output. But of course, the paper remains. That's assignment 2. And then, again, so SocSc13 and NSTP KISS, they share the same final integrated output, the livelihood piece for your communities. I hope that's been fruitful, that has proven to be fruitful for you guys so far. I hope so. No? And the online engagement, too bad it's online. No? It's kind of different if you're really engaging with the communities firsthand or in person, but still. So as such, follow the NSTP instructors guidelines for that. I also discussed that I think 2 weeks ago. It's in one of my decks 2 weeks ago. But if you forget, just refer to your NSTP instructors guidelines. And then submit your output both to your instructor for NSTP as well as to me, the same one. So that will account for your final output, which is 30%. So again, sorry, not to, I was a bit disappointed a bit, no? So because I've discussed this in the past, no? So I hope no more queries for things that I've discussed in the past. So again, you don't have to attend the synchronous sessions, but it's good, no? But if you don't attend, I will hold you guys responsible. You should be responsible for knowing whatever I discussed. So, and you can ask your classmates also. So, and again, decks and recordings are always posted. So I migrated all my videos to YouTube already. So it's much easier. It's embedded in Canvas. So because apparently Ateneo has limited storage for Zoom. So I had to delete my Zoom videos. So for this and the next week sessions, I'll also migrate that to YouTube. And it's good. It's embedded plus uploaded there. So as you know, I graded assignment 1. I did that yesterday. I posted that. Some of you have questions, no? Pasensya na. Again, as you guys know, I have a full-time job. So I haven't answered all queries yet. No? Maybe I think 2 or 3 only. I still have some pending student emails that I need to answer. So I'll respond by the end of the week. If you have questions or you want tips how to improve your writing, by all means, email me. No problem. I just can't promise you that I'll reply immediately. But for those who already emailed me starting yesterday, I'll respond within the week. And thank you. Thank you for being interested in what I saw as weaknesses or potential areas for improvement. And again, you know, most of you got a B plus and a B, a few A's. I don't think I gave this class. I don't think I gave anyone in this class a C plus. So most of you got good grades, B plus and B. Again, B for me, B is not bad. It's not as high as a B plus or an A, but again, I wanted to just post this rating scale, no? So 82 and above is B or B plus or even A. So again, I've gotten a query, sir, you haven't graded the discussion boards. I will not grade them individually, no, per thread. I will do an aggregate score of all your online discussions. So to the extent possible, try to be active there. I'm not looking for long posts, no? But meaningful, short and sweet. Again, another, I'm not sure if it's this class. I won't say if it's this class or the class tomorrow, no? My other section. But someone actually, diba, last week I already explained this, no? And gave you some tips. But you know that another student in one of my classes actually went to my department chair complaining, no, that the same thing, modules are quite long, overwhelming. So I had to talk to my department chair, and he agreed, no, that it was reasonable. He saw my syllabus, he saw what I was giving you guys, and he agreed with me that it was reasonable. But again, as I mentioned, I gave you tips. So you can share the load if you really don't have time, uh, and that's what law students do. But again, don't be scared of workload, especially when you're students. You have a lot of energy. Uh, and it's good, no? That you're doing all of your learning online. You have more time in a sense. And you have less classes that you're juggling in a sense. Because I think for normal sense, no? For face-to-face classes, ako, at least during my time, I had 5 or 6 classes at the same time. So don't be scared of workload. And that's a lesson also for you guys. When you start working, especially for the first few years. Magpuyat kayo for the first few years, especially in your job. And it will do wonders. Then of course, when you're a bit older like me, then you can start, limiting your work to really 8 to 5. So again, it's good practice also. No? Try to absorb as much, learn as much when you're younger. It will really um, um, do wonders for your career, especially. All right. Any concerns at this point before we jump into module 4?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, sorry. Can you speak up? My earphone is not working properly. Wait lang ha. Let me just increase the volume. Yes.
Sir, can you hear me
Go
now?
ahead.
Okay, sir.
Yes,
To
yes.
clarify, so do we submit the NSTP output at the same time for SocSci? So it's gonna be the same deadline.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it's gonna be what guideline was given to you. That's what you should follow. So same thing, same thing. But you just have to submit it to your NSTP formator and to me at the same time,
All right,
actually,
sir.
because
Thank
it's the same out.
thank you, sir.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Sir, sorry.
Go
There
ahead,
are
Monica.
some classmates po asking if all the discussion boards will be closed on the 29th sabay dun sa the one for the assignment 2, or is the discussion board still gonna remain open until finals week?
I muted myself. Sorry. Um, I will be closing. Sige, if you guys want, I'll be closing everything by October 30. Kasi, di ba, let me look at the calendar now. Finals week is until, hindi, 30 pala. Sorry, I thought 29th was the Friday. No? So, sige, let's open it everything until Halloween. Kasi I think the grades are due November 9 or something. So I can still see your posts. Sige, until October 31. Okay ba yan?
Thank you, sir.
Alright, sige, sige. Please let everyone know, ha? Kasi I might not have time to post that announcement anymore in Canva. So please let everyone know, including your discussion board for assignment 2. Sige. So let's do the max October 31. Sige. Sure.
Thank you,
Sayang
sir.
kasi again, it's 20% of your grade. Sige. So bawi na kayo. All right? Any other concerns? Okay. I will proceed. So module 4, again, these things might be new to you, no? For this afternoon, we'll discuss agri and public finance and taxation. We'll try to, no? Again, some of these might be overwhelming to you because they're kind of new. But through this synchronous session, I hope I can try to simplify things. And really, try your best to understand terms, and ask me lang if something is not clear, especially if the concepts are new to you. All right. Stop me at any time, okay? You saw this in Canvas, perhaps. It's not really a nice chart, no, but it works. No, it comes from Statista. Statista is one of the. It's a good website, no, that provides detailed charts, off-the-shelf charts already, no, for countries, no, different economic indicators. So, why are we even discussing agriculture aside from being required by CHED? No? Why is it important? We're talking about development. So here, if you see, the share of GDP, again, GDP is the pie. So think of the pie divided into what? Sabihin natin 10 slices. So if you think about it, agriculture, the share, in that pie has been, in terms of economic output, so that's agri, fisheries, forestry, it's been going down, but it still accounts for almost 10%, roughly 10%. And that's big, no? Kasi the GDP right now is roughly the nominal value, the value is like around 16 or almost 17 in 2019, 17 trillion pesos. So if you get just 10% of that, that's still more than 1 trillion pesos. So that's still something. And it's also important because it employs almost 1 out of 4 people. That sector employs 1 out of 4 workers here in the right side. That's why it's important. So I think right now, the number of employed people are roughly, give or take, 40 million. So you're talking about 10 million Filipinos relying on agriculture for their livelihood. So that's why it's important. It has a small, among all the sectors, agri-industry services, it's the smallest share. It has the smallest share, but it's still something. It's still significant. And even though it has a small share, 1 out of 4 Filipino workers rely on it for their livelihood. And here, really, this is an important chart. If you see the chart where it says poverty incidence of the basic sectors, the poverty incidence for people in the rural areas is really higher than the ones in the urban areas. And if you just count the number of, kasi in the Philippines or in any area, you can basically, you can either live in an urban area or a rural area. Walang in between. So either or yan. So now, if you count the number of poor people, I mean, the people with incomes below the poverty line, for both the rural areas and the urban areas, you'll see, and divide the total, you'll see that more or less, and this has been constant sort of in the past years, 75% of the poor, more or less, give or take, or more than 70%, are located in the rural areas. And rural areas are synonymous to agriculture. That's why if you really want to help uplift the lives of the poor, one of the important things is you look to the rural areas. You look to agriculture. Most of the poor rely on agriculture, and most of the poor are located in the rural areas. This has been a constant statistic if you follow the trends in the Philippines. Mababa na yung 66%, 2/3. So 2 out of 3 people, or 3 out of 4 poor people reside in rural areas. So that is important. So it has a small but significant contribution to GDP, to the pie. It employs 1 out of 4 Filipino workers, and most of the poor actually are residing in rural areas. Ito in thousands to, by the way. So you see, in 2018, uh, there were more than 12.5 million. Sorry, these are in thousands if you saw in Canvas. More than 12.6 million poor people residing in rural areas versus only 5 million. Only relative. Of course, malaki pa rin. That's 5 million residing in urban areas. So it's really much bigger in the rural areas. And I hope you saw the the snippet. No? I didn't ask you to watch the entire UP Los Baños UPLB forum, but just Dr. Shell Habito's presentation. And that's the trend, no? If you go back to statistics before, agriculture was always the laggard compared to industry or manufacturing and services. Dati, it's always negative growth or it's like almost zero growth. It's not the pie for agriculture is not getting big. But if you listen to what Habito was saying, basically, the economy really tanked. No? It really went down in the first half of 2020. H1 basically means the first half, first semester. Q2 means second quarter. So it was the only gainer. Diba? Again, there's three sectors in the economy. Broadly speaking, agri, industry, services. Manufacturing or industry went down, really contracted. Services, same thing. It was only agriculture, which was the laggard before, that was the bright spot for the first quarter, second quarter of this year, as well as the first half, if you total it. Siya lang yung gainer in terms of expanding. Diba? Again, what you want always happening is the GDP is growing. Diba? Of course, without forgetting all of the different things, but you want the economic pie still to expand. And what happened was the other components, the two others, did not expand, only agri. And during the pandemic, all the more, no, they're saying, all the economists are saying na it's actually good to focus on agriculture. Why? I don't know if you were able to digest this one, no? That was in the same page as Dr. Habito's presentation in the UPLB forum. Basically, during this pandemic, it's dangerous if you're working, let's say, in a factory, no? When you guys are yung dikit-dikit, di ba? When you guys are together in one location. During the pandemic, agriculture is actually perfect because you're far apart. Hectares yan. So you can really practice social distancing. Compare that with factories, assembly lines, or office even. It's harder. So what they're saying now is they were analyzing. So what would be the viable industries? When I say viable, it had these different criteria. No? When you say viable, it has to have a significant share in the GDP. Kasi useless naman if you're focusing on something but the impact is small. No? Dapat it has a significant contribution to GDP, to the pie. It has to employ a lot of people. Of course, we want people to have jobs. Forget about the multiplier for now. And you combine that criteria with, can you practice social distancing? What are the infection risks low? So nakita nila, agriculture is actually the best for that. Because again, they employ almost 10 million. Their share of GDP is 7.7%. And obviously, the infection risks are low. Even if the farmers don't wear masks, the infection risks are low. Kasi they're far apart, di ba? And that's what they realized. No? During the pandemic in Metro Manila, Cebu, Davao, major cities, many shops closed down. But if they compared the unemployment statistics for agriculture before and during the pandemic, it hardly changed. So the farmers were still able to continue their work because it's by default, they practice social distancing. Or you can. And the second one, and that's why agriculture is important, is the second viable industry they saw was food manufacturing. Again, it accounts for actually higher, no? 8% of GDP, a million people. And, relatively, it's not as safe as agriculture, but, medium. Diba? Food manufacturing, I think, when you say, to simplify things, when you say food manufacturing, that's mga banana chips, etc. sa chips. So, yun lang. Just remember that to simplify things. But of course, there are other types when you say food manufacturing. Pwede ring hot dog or whatever. So it depends on the factory if they can practice social distancing there. And the reason why I kept saying that, and this didn't come from me, that this came from a USAID funded project based on the study of Dean Nanti Aldaba, who's the Dean of Social Sciences here in Ateneo. So, food manufacturing, where do the inputs come from? Still agriculture. Diba? How can you manufacture food if agriculture doesn't exist? So if you think about it, these two industries and sectors rely both on agriculture. So you're talking about, if you combine them, more than almost 16% contribution to the pie, more than 10%, 10 million people employed, or almost 11. Risks are relatively okay. So that's really the bright spot now, even if you have a prolonged pandemic, no? Hopefully not, knock on wood, no? The agri will be the bright spot. No? And later on, if we go to the thrusts of government, they want agri not just to be production or livestock selling, no? or poultry or piggery, etc. They actually want agriculture to evolve into food manufacturing or to become an industry and not just agri lang. Kasi when we say agriculture, at its basic sense, it's planting and raising livestock or cutting down trees if you want to include forest. So that's another important reason why we want to emphasize agriculture. Especially during this pandemic, it holds the most promise, and as shown by the statistics. All right. So I'll continue, no, if you don't have questions. Key issues, no. I hope you've managed to read the first part of the PDP, the Philippine Development Chapter on agriculture. It's a long list of key issues. I just summarized it here based on the write-up. And this is good, no? When we go to government trusts, I won't really discuss the PDP anymore. I'll go straight to Secretary Dar's trusts because that's the latest one. Secretary Dar, when they did the PDP, wasn't appointed yet. Isa new appointee was just appointed last year, replacing Secretary Ping. So I'll go through this quite quickly. You can read more during the PDP. So I'll try to give examples as much as possible. So what are the key issues? When you say key issues from preventing the agriculture to produce more economic output and for the farmers to really have better sustained livelihood. So this one really speaks to the farmer's plight. Limited access to credit and insurance. That's been a problem, especially for the others. In the other section, they were also tackling the agri-agra law. No? But for this, for the group doing Magna Carta on SMEs, this is a bit relevant, although this is agri. So access to credit and insurance. So banks are not risk averse. They usually don't want to lend to people who don't have collateral, who don't have track record. So, farmers, when the banks see they're kind of poor, so parang they're averse, they're reluctant to lend. So even the government banks, they have most of the time strict standards. So farmers cannot easily get loans. No? When you say credit, loans lang yan. And insurance. So I want to get money from the bank to buy seeds, to buy farm tools, but they won't give me. So how can I farm better? Insurance is better when it comes to crisis. No? Usually when you say insurance, that's crop insurance. No? You don't have to memorize this, but additional information. The Philippines has what it calls crop insurance. There's a government agency that deals with crop insurance where if the farmers were planting and then there's a typhoon that hits, they lose their crops, the government pays them an equivalent value. So, and that's limited. No? It has expanded quite a bit, no? but the coverage in terms of all the farmers, it's still quite limited in terms of that insurance. This one, go back to your lesson on total factor productivity. You know, a lot of how can you boost productivity if a lot of agriculture production here in the Philippines is still manual labor. You know, you see it's a romanticized picture, pero it's the yung araro, di ba? It's the farmer using the carabao or the tamaraw in some cases, no? Yung araro. No? So, and in most developed countries, agriculture is an industry and it's commercial grade or commercial scale because it's mechanized, it's more modern. So if you're tackling rice tariffication law, you might have seen that there's part of the law that calls for more modernization and mechanization for rice. So medyo manual pa for now. And inadequate post-harvest facilities, basically these are storage, no? Cold storage, let's say. So for example, you harvest goods, but you don't have refrigerated warehouses, then it will easily rot. And then before you can even transport it, a significant share of your crops are already spoiled. Or even fisheries, no? This happens a lot. No? Fisheries, if the fishermen don't have cold storage facilities, then again, there's a lot of spoilage that happens. Sayang. Inadequate irrigation, again, that's more for agri, for crops. That's another issue. Limited research and development, again, we haven't been known for that. It's funny, no? We have a lot of really a few world-class research and development facilities, but we haven't really taken advantage of that. And that's tied to the next point, the weak extension services. When you say weak extension services, it's basically services in the local government units or state universities and colleges that provide capacity building, that provide training, let's say, or advice to farmers. How to plant better, what are better methods, what seeds to plant, what crops will grow better in this soil type, etc., etc. So limited na research and development, cascading it to the farmers is also weak because again, agriculture is left up to the state universities around the country or the local government units. And if the local government units don't have the right budgets to put in place well-qualified agriculturists to provide support to the farmers, wala. Then even if you have good research and development labs in the Philippines or research centers, the knowledge or the good practices doesn't cascade down to the farmers. That's what you call, that's how you define extension services. It's an institution that provides extension services to the farmer, teaches them how to do a better job at producing modern methods, etc., etc. There are also agrarian reform issues, no? So we'll get to that later. If you notice, if you're done with the agri piece in Module 4, agrarian reform is probably the most complex among all our topics. There's a lot of really issues there. So we'll get to that later. And lastly, one of the things in the PDP that was mentioned, aging farmers. I think the average age of farmers is 55 or so in the Philippines. And that's a trend that's observed around the world, not just here. Because the young people, especially even the children of farmers, even the farmers, no, they actually don't want their kids to do farming, to engage in agriculture. Why? Because it's low paying, and incomes are seasonal. So even the farmers, no, they don't want their kids to be in the farm. Many. So a lot of kids, they don't want. Kayo ba? I'm sure. I am sure, no, none of you, or even maybe less than 5 of you, will want to be a farmer. Maybe as a pastime, but not as a full-time job. So just a quick run through of the key issues. So ito naman. So you have the key issues. What now are the key thrusts of government in terms of agriculture? So again, si Secretary Dar, one of my favorite, personally, favorite cabinet secretaries. He's really doing a good job. And the statistics show it. Again, agriculture was the lone bright spot in our GDP, in our economic output, the country. And he's solid. He has a PhD, and he used to head this think tank, this Center for I forget the name, before he was appointed. And that's regional, meaning Asia-wide, not just the Philippines. So it's really solid. He has both academic qualifications and practical experience. So he knows his stuff. He's well respected in this sector. So eight things. I'll discuss in greater detail some, especially number 2 and number 4. So again, I'll try to breeze through this. I don't expect you to memorize this. I just want you to at least have a basic understanding or knowledge of what they're trying to push. So again, modernization, going back to this, yung low farm mechanization. Agriculture is not productive, or has low productivity because a lot of it is manual labor. So the DA has good programs now, including provisions in the tarification law. 2, again, what they're saying is, agriculture, and we'll go to the value chain discussion in a while. Don't be content. No, okay naman. No? So you mechanize. It's more your production is more your output is more productive. But don't stop there. No. Also, you industrialize. You convert, instead of just focusing on production, basic production. You process things, and we'll go to that in a while when we tackle value adding and value chains. And that's part of what you saw in the Kennemer example. 3, export. So again, you saw that also in the page, if you've managed to go through it. You saw that in the page on value chains as well. You want, the government wants to expand markets. And you learned this in your management class in the 4th year. No? Because in your 4th year, I did MECO. You're supposed to run your own business. No? If you don't have buyers, even if you have a solid product, then nothing's going to happen. So, and one of your key markets will be exports. So you want to expand the buyers, the set of buyers for the farmers and the fisher folk. So you also want to promote exports. And the good thing with promoting exports, it raises the standards of farm output or fisheries output to a higher level. And that's tied also to modernization. How can you have higher standards, better quality, if it's all mano-mano, if it's all manual? We'll discuss number 4 in a while. Infrastructure development is key, and in the development world, you'll hear a lot about infrastructure. And when we go to our discussion on government spending, infrastructure is important because it connects. At the basic level, it connects farms to the markets. Diba? You'll go to a lot of rural areas. They don't have paved roads. It's hard for the farmers to transport their goods because there aren't roads to begin with. It's not paved. So that presents issues. No? The more infrastructure you can develop, the more you can connect places and farms to other places, much better. And that facilitates trade. Diba? This is self-explanatory, higher budget, obviously. And they're grappling with that right now in the proposed 2021 budget. The initial proposal was the budget proposed for agriculture was smaller for 2021 than it is now. So they're actually saying, no, it has to be higher. And as the sector has proven, it is a bright spot. So you should support it more. And legislative support is needed. There's also self-explanatory. Hopefully, they can create more policies that can support agriculture. And this one, it's basically just for government. That's more an internal reminder. There needs to be a cohesive roadmap where all the different stakeholders, all the different agencies involved in agriculture will follow one cohesive roadmap. Diba? Kayo, for example, most of you are members of student organizations. Imagine if you didn't have one cohesive plan, all of you just did what you wanted. This is a book. Diba? So it's better to have one cohesive roadmap that everyone involved in the sector will follow. All right. This is a hotly contested topic, actually. But it's a very basic, simple topic to understand. And now I want to ask you guys, based on what you've read, what you've heard, anyone, no? Based on what you've learned, what is the difference between food security and self-sufficiency? Whenever you hear debates about agriculture, it's always these two terms. So we have to be self-sufficient. Some will say, no, not necessarily, as long as we're food secure. So can someone, to make it less boring so that, you have other people talking. What's the difference? Can you share to the class what you've learned? While I drink water. Can someone lang? Anyone who wants to share what he or she has learned so far? I'm sure some of you have finished that page in Canvas. Sino?
I think that food
Oh, go
security
ahead.
is having proper access to food, but self-sufficiency is like you make the food yourself. Food security doesn't really mean that it comes from like where you are, but so it can be like stuff that you import, and that just means that you have access to food. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's perfect, actually, Emilia. Thank you for that. And I go to my next slide. So it's different because yes, self-sufficiency, you make it yourself, whatever you consume. Food security is you don't necessarily have to produce it yourself, as long as the public, the people have food available, accessible. That's why infrastructure again is important and affordable. And going back now, this is additional information. I wanted to go back here because we talked about accessible. This one, one of the things why we need better infrastructure in this country, not just agriculture. One trivia for you guys. Shipping costs they've observed are more expensive from Mindanao to Manila than it is in certain areas in the US to the Philippines. There are other reasons for it, but that just basically tells you there is something lacking, and that is primarily infrastructure. So the issue here is, I think in Canvas we cited, I think the article I shared with you cited Singapore. Because remember, no, we are all consumers. There's around 10 million of us who are producers, farmers, fishermen. But all of us are consumers. So the problem is, if we always strive for self-sufficiency, let's not import anymore. What if it's expensive? What if it's expensive? No, we produce, we're proud, kaya natin to. We won't import. We'll just make do. We'll produce everything ourselves. What if it's substantially, significantly more expensive? So you're actually penalizing the consumers, especially the poor. Because you can import, it's actually cheaper. I'll stop there because I almost slipped. No? I might be inadvertently helping the rice tariffication team. But just remember, all administrations, this has been a romanticized dream. Oh, we want to be self-sufficient in XYZ. But the problem is, if you're not competitive, if other countries can produce it cheaper and it's a basic good, a basic necessity in the country, maybe you go for food security rather than self-sufficiency. Or you can do it at the same time, no? In parallel. No? If you think your basic necessity, your production is still expensive, not at par with other countries, you aim for that. But while you're still in a sense improving on that front, making it more productive, making it less expensive, you address first food security. So there's really nothing wrong with importing different kinds of food products. Again, the number one, especially for a poor country, rich country is fine. But even Singapore, they're rich, but they because of their limited land, they don't prioritize this. What's important is the people can eat cheaply, it's always there, and it's accessible. They can find it in markets, and it's available. So especially for poor countries, what Secretary Dar, before the article I shared you, before he became secretary, you address this first. While you can try to strive for this, you can do it at the same time. No? You can't be self-sufficient right away, but you can take baby steps. But you prioritize this while you're taking baby steps. And then eventually, you might be competitive enough. So, sige, we won't import na. We can compete na. The prices are okay na. So take note, the rice tariffication law, something to think about. The RTL guys. But again, I'm not, I leave it there. I won't try to help you now. All right. And we'll discuss this again. That's why I put a separate page in Canvas. We'll discuss this again when we talk about agrarian reform. In agriculture production, in agri-production, scale is really important. When you say scale, it's like big. Scale just means big. Larger land sizes, as you can see here, are more productive and more cost efficient. Why do you want to be more cost efficient? Because you want the production to be cheaper. Because the prices in the market, what consumers will buy, will now be cheaper. Diba? It cascades, of course. It can be cheap. It can be cheap if production is expensive. Diba? And you saw a short cartoon video. If you haven't, or if you forgot your basic economics about economies of scale, which is a very important topic, even for you guys when you when you start working in companies, economies of scale is important. It's basically, it has to do with your fixed costs. Kasi di ba, imagine mo nga, not the farm, no? A factory, for example, as in the video, no? Just to teach you what economies of scale is all about. If a factory can produce, no? I mean, electricity cost, water cost, ingredients, etc., are the same, no? But for factory A, no, they with the same inputs, the same cost, fixed costs. You've learned fixed costs in your accounting. They can only produce 10,000 pieces of something, whereas factory B, same setup, they can produce 20,000 or 30,000. Then your cost per unit becomes smaller in the more productive factory. So the same with farms. No? They're saying, you know, the more land you have, the better it is. Because for example, if you have a tractor, ito, going into agri, no? You have a tractor and you're only using that for 1 hectare versus a tractor, you're using that for 5 hectares. It's more cost efficient if you have a larger land size, more bang for the buck. Kasi the cost, let's say the cost of the tractor is, let's say, I don't know, 100,000 pesos. You're producing 1 million worth of produce for 1 hectare versus the same tractor, 100,000 pesos, producing 100 million worth of produce for 5 hectares. And it was cost efficient for the larger. So in agriculture, if you forget these topics, always think in terms of scale. If ever you'll be working for agribusiness companies in the future, scale is important. They want to lease or buy lands that are really big because of economies of scale. They will have lower cost per input. Fixed cost yan, di ba? Fixed cost is fixed regardless of your output. So the more output you have with the same fixed cost, the better. Di ba? Kasi the cost will be lower per unit of output. I think most of you might have learned that in your basic accounting. In my time, we took basic accounting in our second year for MECO and management folks as well. So the current thrust of that's why it's number 4 in this 8-point paradigm is on land consolidation. Kasi if you've read some of the agrarian reform pieces, because also of CARP and CARPER, lands became fragmented. So now the agri department is trying to sort of correct that by incentivizing land consolidation. If you saw the last part of that Canvas page, they're now offering, sometimes they're offering better loan packages if the lands are, you know, if let's say cooperatives band together and work on a larger size land versus smaller pieces. So the government is really trying to incentivize that. So what you have to remember, in agriculture, scale is important. Go for bigger lands. Bigger, contiguous lands, no? Kabit-kabit. All right. I'll keep going, unless you guys have questions. So this one is very important, especially for you guys, because you guys are into management. You're going to be running your businesses. How can farmers realize increased incomes and make the sector more productive? Value chains is a very important concept. I am managing a project now in USA now, and this is a major feature of what we want to do to make farmers gain more income. So three main pathways. Now. I'll discuss the concept when I discuss the second point. The first is you shift to high value crops. That's the first one. How you can realize incomes. No? So for example, there's a list. No? So let's say the Kennemer example. No? So if the farmers were only planting, let's say, corn or rice, that doesn't give them a lot of income. But if they shift, no, I'm not even sure. I'm not an agriculturist. So for example, they start shifting to a crop that gives them higher returns or higher incomes. Let's say cacao, for example, the Kennemer example. And that's, cacao is in huge demand around the world, not just in the Philippines, but especially outside the Philippines. And Kennemer, actually, if you remember the video, they buy from Mars. So they source from the Philippines and I think in other Asian countries and sell to Mars because the market is outside, not necessarily inside. So that's one. So your production, you will earn more money if you shift to another crop. Or in the case of fisheries, if you focus on other kinds of fish. Lapu-lapu, for example, is much expensive than tilapia. So ganon, for example, there's a list of what they call high-value crops. That's one. The second really is the more important for me. And this speaks really to Secretary Dar's push for industrialization in agriculture. Participate in value chains. This is a value chain. This is a basic schematic. It's more complex than that, but these are the basic concepts. So of course, you have the input. Forget about this. Let's start with this. Input lang naman, I refer to seeds, the tractors, etc. What farmers need to plant. But forget about them for a while. Let's start the chain here. So when you say chain, it's basically each step, they add certain things. So farmers, let's say this is cacao. Going back to the Kennemer example. So let's say a cacao farmer plants cacao. The next step in the chain is they sell it to traders and processing companies. So the cacao beans that the processing companies buy from the farmers gets converted into, let's say, cacao pallets or whatever you call it, cacao bits. And then they further sell to factories which turn them into cacao chocolate bars. Then they sell it to food companies. The food companies can be the ones to turn it into chocolate bars. And then they sell it to the retailers and then finally the consumers. When you say value chain, and this is different from supply chain. Supply chain kasi is, how do I transport my cacao beans all the way to the grocery without converting the crop into something else? Value chain kasi is you add value. You convert, let's say cacao, you convert a crop or a certain product into something else. You transform it and you add value. And the reason why they're called value chains is the price of the commodity goes up at each stage of the value chain. There's another example there, yung coffee in that particular page. So here, you'll notice, dito na tayo in this chart, you'll notice that for a chocolate bar, the farmers only earn 3% of the total value. The processors who turn it into something else earn significantly more. So ito yan, so they earn okay because it's cacao, it's a high value crop, but the ones who turn it or transform it into something else, value adding, that's the concept of value adding, earn significantly more. And then those who further turn it into something else, let's say ito, basic cacao coins for baking. Those who turn it into bars earn more than them the processing, and definitely more than the farmers, as you can see here in this Oxfam chart. So what I'm saying is another way to achieve higher incomes is instead of just cultivating crops or growing or producing basic commodities, you can shoot for value addition. You can go into processing. And that's what Secretary Dar was talking about when you industrialize agriculture. You focus also on transforming it because it fetches a higher price. Of course, if it fetches a higher price, then all the more that your incomes will go higher. But coffee and cacao, that's more sophisticated. No? Not all farmers can readily just install a manufacturing plant, no, because that's expensive, and that requires sophisticated equipment. So not necessarily in all value chains. No? So coffee and cacao, that might be harder. No? So something like chips, for example, the ones that's why you see in all provinces, if you go around, there's a lot of banana chip companies, no? Because instead of growing bananas, those who process them into banana chips, they earn significantly more than the basic producers. And you can Google a lot more. No, I provided a lot of links to this, but that's the basic concept of value chains. You'll earn higher the more you move up the chain. But again, there are constraints. Hindi naman ibig sabihin a farmer wants to earn more. I can process my own cacao. Maybe to a certain extent. So it's not possible in all industries. So of course you can advocate for value addition, move up the value chain, but it doesn't happen all the time. So you can still participate in value chains as a producer of the basic crop, not the one adding value. Pwede pa rin. As long as you realize higher incomes, as long as it's a higher value crop. So in the case of cacao, that's what the Kennemer farmers, the farmers being supported by Kennemer, were doing. But to the extent possible, and not just farmers, no, but you guys, no, when you run agribusinesses, you'll realize this. When you start industrializing agriculture, you go into manufacturing, you process it into something else, you add value, you make more income. And that's income that you can also cascade back to the farmers if you want. And there's a lot of social enterprises doing that. Whatever the processors are making, they flow back to the farmer. So more income for everyone else. And lastly, make sure, if you want more incomes, make sure there's a market. And you will really realize this in your fourth year. The problem with government intervention before, livelihood training here, there, we'll teach you how to do this, we'll teach you how to plant. Number one, first, make sure someone is going to buy that, because you might just raise expectations. You tell the farmer or you tell the value-adding group, a cooperative, oh, you produce this, I'll teach you how to do this. What if there are no buyers? Then they will just lose money instead of make more money. And the Kennemer case is that. No? So Kennemer provided support to farmers, and they buy the beans from the farmers. There's a market, and they sell it further outside. So this, for me, this is one of the most important things to boost productivity in agriculture and to raise people's incomes, especially farmers and cooperatives. All right, the last topic here in agriculture was the most complex, I think, in all of your topics. Here, I want us to help, I want us to help each other. Tell me now, and I'll share this screen. I want people to just either type or verbalize your answers. What have you learned? Positives and negatives, plus and minus. What have you learned so far? Verbal na lang if you can, because it's hard for me to see the chat box as well as anyone. Just feel free to just just spew out words. No, what have you learned in your agrarian reform topic? What are the positives of carper? What are the negatives? Oh, positives first. Positives. Oh, takers, and we can have as many as you want. So sige, anyone, please. I'll type here. Sino? Any takers? Just unmute yourself and speak out. Let's try to create this table. No takers? Don't tell me no one has gone through the agrarian reform topic yet. Positives lang. Oh, positives first. Positives. I hear someone.
From what I remember po, there's really a positive impact po for the corp beneficiaries like compared to those na
Positive impact in terms of what?
um
Sorry, I lost you there, Isabel. In terms of
wait lang po sir.
okay lang. Sige, I'll help you. Incomes, di ba?
Incomes po.
They're saying lower poverty incidences for agrarian reform beneficiaries. Than di ba? Sabi nila kay Dr. Celia Lewis. Other positives or negatives? Sige. Negatives. Sino? Anyone? Oh, wala bang nagbasa? Kahit one negative or two.
Sir, it would be
Monica, sige, go ahead. Sino yon?
Isabel po.
Isabel. Okay, go ahead.
It reduces agricultural productivity po.
Decreased agricultural productivity. Remember our topic on scale, di ba? Fragmented lands, less scale, di ba? What else?
For positives, sir,
Yeah.
improve tenure.
Improve tenure, yes, because they now own the land. That's the essence of CARP, di ba? They give you land. So of course you have to repay it, but there's a long period naman for you to pay. Sige, positive or negative? Who else?
Sir, for
I think
negative,
someone else.
wait.
Sige, go ahead.
Like it's disadvantageous for those that kill traditional crops.
Disadvantageous to those cultivating traditional crops. What else?
For positives, sir, enhance agricultural production and productivity.
Sige. So there's a clash there, no? Kasi dito you're saying decreased agri-productivity, dito naman it's enhanced agri-production. Sige, we'll go through that later. Meron pa before I go through sort of a long list. One more. Sige, one more.
Sir, for negative,
Yes.
um,
Sige.
I remember they're saying na parang the cooperatives of the farmers are not really organized enough. So parang you're not being able to, the government's not really able to help them then.
All right. Sige. Thank you for that. Anyone else? Sige. Ako naman, what's on my list? So if you summarize, if I try to summarize all the readings, and sorry for all the readings, but I hope you found it interesting at least. Not complex. No? I have to agree. But it's because it's really a complex topic, even for development professionals in myself. I'll go back to presenting mode. Wait. Oops. Can you see the slideshow, guys? All right. You can see this, no? Can someone tell
Yes, sir.
me? Okay, sorry, because it's hard for me to see the chat box. So on the positives, yun nga, there have been studies daw saying PIDS, no? Si Dr. Celia Reyes, si Dr. Habito, si Edilion, and Pisa. And if you remember, no, si Rose Edilion, that was a study she did before she joined government. Kasi if you remember Module 1, she was in the SDG diba, interview representing NEDA. And the poor have an asset. Diba? Sabi nga nila, diba, when we were discussing determinants of chronic and transient poverty, asset ownership is important. Kasi safety net mo rin yun. You have an asset, at least you have something that when you're pressed, when you're desperate, then it's something you can use, sell or whatever. And you know, in many cases, the poor were provided with support services. But it was, they're saying the government did a lousy job. This is still being implemented up to now. It's been 30 years already. For the negatives, there's actually a longer list. Dr. Fabella was saying, no, actually there might be some methodological issues on studies on poverty reduction. Saying na, baka naman, or if ever there were some impact on poverty, it's kind of modest. And even the PIDS paper, the long one, no, said that no, there were, at best, there were modest improvements in incomes. And yes, the problem is, yes, they have, let me get my laser pointer. The problem is, yes, they have an asset, but, you know, parang I give you a car, let's say, your parents give you a car, for example. Pero you have a lot of constraints. You can't go beyond the subdivision. You can't use it to go out with friends at night. Parang, I have an asset, but there are a lot of constraints. So, for example, you know, I own the land, but I can't lease it for 10 years, and until I've paid off my entire loan, and I can't go to the bank and use it as collateral. You know, collateral, di ba? Collateral means lang naman I borrow money from a bank or from someone, but if I default, then you can take my land or take whatever it is I'm using as collateral. That's what collateral means. No cost theorem. Dr. Fabella talked about cost theorem. You don't have to really understand that extensively. All it's saying is for any commodity, any asset, it should theoretically go where it should be going, the ideal thing, as priced. No? The price will determine the best use or best purpose for that piece of asset. So land, no? What they're saying is the land could have been, so hindi na nagawa si cost theorem because the land could have been leased to an agribusiness company who can make better use of it. They have more productive equipment. But there are constraints. So if I wanted to lease my land, I could not. And that brings us to this topic. It's forced entrepreneurship. What if I'm happy with just, cultivating a small piece of land and the rest of the land I can't use, no? But it forces me, no? I'm given 3 hectares of land. I'm forced to be a commercial farmer, but I am not an entrepreneur. Remember, no, you can't expect that everyone can be an entrepreneur. So I have many constraints. I have a large piece of land. I can't make the most out of it. I can't lease it. I end up being poor because I cannot maximize. I cannot lease it to someone else who can make it more productive and earn money. So as Dr. Fabella was discussing, there were black markets for that. No? They were sort of trading their lands in the underground market, not formally, illegally, if you think about it. So I can't maximize my land. I have an asset which, if I can't commercially make use of it, and at the same time I can't sell it or lease it to a company, then I can be what they call a landed poor because of the constraints. You give me an asset, but ang daming strings attached. And there were some indebtedness. No, again, it's not land for free. You have to pay it back eventually. And again, you're forced to make use of the land. You get a loan to buy tractors, farm implements, tools, and that can lead to indebtedness. And this was mentioned by one of your classmates. No? Fragmentation leads to agri-productivity loss. Again, agri is supposed to be scalable. If you fragment lands, 1 hectare here, 1 hectare there, it leads to productivity loss. Not only that, I'm an agribusiness company. I will not invest in that area. Because if for example, okay na, no, it's that I paid the farmer, for example, has paid off the loan. It's been more than 10 years, so I can lease it now. An agribusiness company doesn't necessarily want to lease it because it's only 1 hectare or 3 hectares at most. I can't make a lot of money, no? Because it goes against the economies of scale. So what Fabella was saying and other opinion makers were saying, it actually led to capital flight. No? Capital flight means the money actually left. Instead of you attract money and more investment, you actually disincentivize investment. Because the companies don't want to touch small pieces of land. Diba? Instead of attracting money, investments, you actually disincentivize. The quality of land, a lot of observers were saying the capital flight, the quality of land was actually inferior. The lands that they distributed, most observers were saying, were actually inferior. They weren't premium land. So poor quality of land, a lot of restrictions, and fragmented and forced entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of problems fundamentally. And the last one here is some were forced not to have their own individual titles, but as part of a community. And there's a problem there because what if after 10 years you want the entire cooperative who owns the piece of land to do something, to lease it, but majority say no. So you're also trapped because you're at the mercy of what the majority decides. So I'm not saying that CARP was bad or good. I'm just basically listing based on what they've studied as the pros and cons. But they may have provided assets. They may have lowered poverty incidences for some or for many, but it came with a lot of issues. Implementation and as well as effects. So I tried to simplify things into this list. All of the things you read can be summarized into all of these issues, both the positives and the negatives. So before we leave agriculture, and this is the latest thinking. Kasi we can't turn our back now. We can say, don't implement CARP anymore. Tapos na. It's been implemented for the last 30 years. So what they are now saying, no, debt condonation. Just forgive the debt. Wag na to. Diba kasi, again, the farmers, it's not free land. They have to pay back the government every year for that asset. So if what theoretically, if they say, oh, you don't owe the government anything anymore, what's gonna happen is the constraint will be lifted. It will be removed. So for example, you've had that land for 10 years now, then you can just do what you want with that land because you've paid off the debt. So you can lease it, you can sell it, you can do what you want. So it follows the principle of cost theory. Best use of land. It will follow, if it can be traded, then it will follow the best use for a corresponding price. And for the issue about individual landowner versus community owned, there's a new project called SPLIT, stands for something, funded by the World Bank. They're now trying to carve out per family what really belongs to you. So for example, kayo, your 10 families, the 10 families own that piece of land. They're now trying to establish how do you carve out among the 10 so that you can give individual titles instead of community titles. And that gives maximum flexibility. So both of this will now enable farmers to really do what they want with their land. So that's for me, I find this the most optimal solution now. Forgive the debts, minimize the constraints, parcel it out so that they can decide what to do for themselves. And maybe they can think of combining forces and then aggregating the land and then offering that to agribusiness companies. Going back to what Dara was proposing in terms of consolidation. Because agribusiness companies, entrepreneurial companies want large pieces of land. Of course, the farmers, and this is where cooperatives can play a role, they have to negotiate well, of course, with the companies para hindi lugi, so that they don't get a cheaper price for the lease, or for example. And that's also a rule for the NGOs. So for me, this is a good way forward. Not all development practitioners follow this same recommendation. So this is me, based on what I've read so far. This is a win-win for the farmer as well as potentially for agribusiness companies. And it addresses many of these problems of farm. And at the end of the day, it's basic respect, no, for the farmer. We minimize the constraints. We gave you land, you're now the owner of the land. And then we respect what you want to do with that land. If you want to lease it, you want to do it, go ahead. Gives maximum flexibility. That's a principle I'm willing to adopt. Again, not every development worker agrees with this, but this is me. For me, I find this is a good middle ground. All right, that was a complex topic, no? Let's go to a relatively still complex, no, but less complex than agrarian reform and agriculture in general. So I'll try to cover this in 30 minutes, no, because I have to end at 7. We have to end at 7. I have another appointment. If we don't, if we're not able to finish this topic, then we'll continue next week. Because demography and the SMEs, those are shorter, much shorter topics. So public finance and taxation, no, that's very important because again, government needs to spend for social services to support their people, and they need to earn money as well. So the most basic question when we talk about public finance, where do they get revenues? Diba? Where do they get revenues to pay for the roads they build, to pay for the services they give to the poor, for free schooling, free education, free hospitals, etc., etc. So taxes, that's the most basic. So it can be direct, like workers like me, we go to BIR once a year or twice a year to compute and pay for income tax. It's a tax on our income. So that's direct. We directly pay. Indirect, it's not me paying BIR directly, but I pay for something else. And a part of that, let's say if you eat at a restaurant, McDonald's, even McDonald's or even Starbucks, part of your total bill goes to you paying value-added tax. So that value-added tax, I no longer have to go to BIR to pay the value-added tax for my burger in McDonald's. It's already paid for. That's why it's indirect. I'm paying taxes not directly to the Bureau of Internal Revenue, the tax agency, but I'm paying for it indirectly when I pay for my burger in McDonald's or Jollibee, because they already have the value-added tax integrated into the final bill. Whereas the direct tax, I have to compute every year and I pay the commensurate tax directly to the BIR, sometimes through the bank, but I still pay it directly, not through a burger or through something else. So just a good distinction. Principles, there's 3. Theoretical justice, it must be progressive. So the income tax that I pay should be based on capacity to pay. So the richer you are, the more income you have, the higher the taxes you should pay. And that's basically what's happening in most countries. And if you notice in the Canvas page, there's a tax table. No? So you see, no, if you're earning 250,000 and below every year, you don't have to pay tax. But if you're earning 2 million and above, then you pay a lot of tax. In France, there was a proposal. No? I wrote that in the Canvas page. They were even proposing the richest group will pay 75%. So imagine, no, if you're earning 100,000 a year and you're taxed at 75, only 25,000 of that 100,000 you get to keep. So that's an extreme example. Fiscal adequacy, they're saying the taxes, the revenues government gets must be adequate for their spending. And of course, administrative feasibility. You don't have to memorize this. But basically, what they're saying is you have to make the process easy. You know, before, you know, they've improved. No? The BIR, they made paying taxes very cumbersome. So parang many people are always saying, you're getting our money na nga. Why is it that it's as if you don't want me to part with my money? Why are you making it difficult for me to give you my money? So what they're saying is, let's try, BIR or the tax agencies should make it easy for people to comply. And part of it also is the tax agency should be credible and, you know, have integrity. In the US, no, people are scared of the IRS. That's what they call their BIR, Internal Revenue Service. So people end up paying because they're scared. Yes, go ahead.
Can we slow down a bit?
Okay. You need to repeat
Thank you.
a particular.
Alright.
Sorry, I'm hearing echo. Do you want me to go back or discuss a particular topic somewhere?
Can we move back a bit to fiscal adequacy?
Okay. Sorry. This one
Thank you.
basically means you don't really, actually, the reason why I went fast here, you don't really have to memorize this. This only means that the way you structure your taxes, the tax rates, uh, vis-a-vis the total number population, your taxes should be adequate enough to cover your spending. That's what it all means. So it has to be adequate. Whenever you see the word fiscal, that automatically means either government spending or government revenues, taxes, etc. So thank you for that. Now, again, tell me if you think I'm going too fast. But for certain things, I will really intentionally move fast because you don't really have to dwell too much on it. But fiscal adequacy means the taxes you get are adequate for your spending. But we'll go to that later on. It doesn't mean it has to be adequate for your current spending, no, because you might have a shortfall. It has to match eventually, even for your long-term spending. So later on, we'll go to that. So it doesn't mean that every year what you earn, what you spend should only be based on what you earn. And that's why we have debt. Basically, what fiscal adequacy means, to the extent possible, the taxes should be commensurate for your spend. Not necessarily for 1 year, because you can incur loans. Eventually, the taxes you pay should be able to cover your spending as well as your loans in the future. But you don't have to dwell too much. This one, administrative. Administrative lang naman means the way I administer something. So the BIR, when they have processes that I need to follow as a taxpayer, they should be simple, not burdensome. I don't have to fill up so many forms. I don't have to follow different procedures. Has to be transparent kasi the public should know. Hindi pwedeng, I don't have any information. How am I going to compute, or what processes should I follow? That should be made clear to the public. And the kind of taxes, the formula should be transparent. Made communicated well to the public. So these are basic principles. So I was also adding earlier, another thing that to remember is also the tax agency, BIR in our case, should also be what they call credible, or takot yung tao, basically. So IRS, in the US, people are scared. Here in the Philippines, sometimes people are not scared. So they end up just evading taxes, lumulusok. So that's another thing to remember. They have to be credible enough so that people will be scared. Because people need to pay taxes. Because where will we get the money? Well, where will government get the money to pay for services and infrastructure? Yeah, again, this might be too complex for you. In the Canvas page, what this means basically, it's called the Laffer curve, named after Arthur Laffer. Basically, they're saying, the rate of taxes that you impose, you should be careful about that. Kasi if it's too high, kasi income tax kasi is commensurate to what people earn with their livelihood. So for example, if it's 100%, ito extreme, no? If I say, all of the money you earn, you give to government, then no one will end up working. So government will no longer get any revenues kasi no one will work. Then no one will earn income, revenue. So that's extreme. That doesn't happen. If you set it too low, let's say no income tax, obviously income times zero, government will also not earn anything because it's zero tax. So basically what it's arguing is there has to be a sweet spot. And this concept is easier understood than put in practice. So if you read the Economist article, what it's basically saying is countries have had a difficult time basically pinpointing the sweet spot. Because it's art and science. Yun lang naman. The basic concept to remember here is the tax rate should not be too high to disincentivize payment and work because it's counterproductive. The government thinks it will earn a lot of money, but no, people will end up not paying or not working. So they will get less. If it's too low, then sayang. No? People could pay more pala. Let's say it's only 10%. No? Sayang. More people can pay more, pero they ended up, or kumbaga people can pay up to 20% and they were willing to pay up to 20% and you set it at 10%, sayang, no? You could have earned more. So it's a sweet spot. No? You don't have to know exactly the computations for this. The basic concept is tax agencies should find the sweet spot. Not too low, not too high. Yun lang. So you don't have to understand it fully. Basta the tax rate should find a sweet spot. Not too high, not too low. For people to continue working and not to evade paying taxes. So yun. Revenue sources, other revenue sources. User fees. Ito, very simple concept to. On the one hand, you have taxes. That's additional revenue source for the government. User fees naman. Ito naman, it doesn't necessarily go to a general pool. User fees, you pay to use something or for something very specific. Kasi income tax that I pay, it goes to a general pot of money and the government can do what they want with it. User fees naman, I pay something for a particular use. So for example, each time you pass through SLEX or NLEX, you pay a toll. That's a user fee. You pay to use or you pay for something. If you pay to get a driver's license, that's also a user fee. It's for a very specific purpose. And whatever you pay does not go into a general pool. Very specific. It only, so the commuters, the ones taking MRT, LRT, they don't pay toll. Or they don't pay things for a driver. They don't pay driver's license fees. Kasi they don't need them. Ito kasi very specific for a particular purpose. Other sources, tariffs. Tariffs are simple to understand, the basic concept. It's basically taxes on imports. So, what's an imported good? Let's say you buy this computer or your phone. A company imports that phone, Android or iOS. When that company imports that device, they pay a tax called tariff. It's a tax on import. So the government imposes certain, it varies, no? Certain taxes, certain tariffs, depending on the good. So mobile phones will have a different tariff rate than laptops, for example. So magkakaiba yan. There's a very long list of the different kinds of tariff levels. What you need to understand, the Bureau of Customs, which collects the tariffs, which are taxes on imports, is another revenue source for government. The tariffs they get, they surrender that also to a common pot, a common pool. Same as your income taxes or the income taxes your parents pay. All of those go to a general pot. So if you see in this slide, this was in your Canvas page as well, it's also significant. Kasi see, in 2019, the red bar represents the share of what the BIR gets, no, in terms of revenues. That's 2 trillion. Itong customs, which is the blue line, it's sizable enough. It's almost 20% of this. So malaki din. The taxes on imports. They're also taxes, but they're called tariffs if it's taxes on imported goods. So simple enough to understand. And that's collected by the Bureau of Customs. Diba, if you've traveled abroad before, once you arrive in NAIA, there is a customs form. You'll go through something, sasabihin nila, do you have imported goods to declare? If yes, then you might have to pay tariffs. So, yun. That's another source of government revenues. Other sources also, and this is the last source, no? Revenues from government. No, government also has what they call state-owned corporations. They make money basically. So PAGCOR, yan yung mga sa casinos, no, the Lotto, PCSO, for example. This is just a sample. No? There are a lot of government-owned and controlled corporations. That's why they're called GOCCs. But what you have to remember is these government-owned and controlled corporations are government-owned. And they make money. And when they make money, a portion of that gets remitted again to that common government pot. And it's not peanuts, no? So, for example, in 2019, they combined, no, all of these plus more. Kasi this is just an example, sample list. Remitted 69 billion pesos, and that's still something. That's still sizable. So just to recap, revenue sources, taxes, number one, usually administered by the BIR. User fees, that's collected by government agencies for a particular purpose. Usually it corresponds. So yung toll fees natin collected by a toll agency, driver's license, for example, collected by LTO, student permit ninyo, diba? That's user fees. Tariffs, they're also taxes, pero taxes on imports. And then ito, no? Revenues collected by money-making government corporations. That's the last source. So yun lang, different kinds of sources of revenues. Again, stop me lang. No? And I appreciate that you guys stopped me earlier. Kasi some of this might be really new to you. So medyo you're still grappling. But some of these are very easy to grasp naman. At yung concept lang. I'm not asking you to know, to really be familiar with all the nuances. Just the basic concepts. So, we discussed revenues, no? Now we go to spending. If you go back, no, di ba, yung in module 2, we talked about how do you compute for GDP. consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net export. So, at its essence, government spending can influence GDP. Ito nga, ito, just statistics, but you don't really have to understand this. No? In the second quarter, same deck to as the one earlier. No? They saw that, in terms of growth, no, everything fell except government expenditure. Government expenditure went up in the second quarter of 2020 compared to the previous year. So, yun nga di ba? GDP really went down. Pero it would have gone down even further if government really did not boost spending. They did not. So, kasama na dito sa spending yung mga social amelioration program, yung mga ayuda, spending for PPEs, lahat dyan. That's part of government spending. It's what government buys, whether that's goods or services. So everything that they bought for the COVID response, that's included. So just linking this back to your module 2 concepts. Government can influence the way the pie grows. Kumbaga, the pie actually shrunk in the second quarter. Pero it could have shrunk more if government did not spend a lot. Yeah, so yung point ko lang in one of the Canvas pages, government spending, the budget is supposed to reflect government priorities. So the 2021 budget is still being deliberated in Congress. The 2020 budget before COVID happened, before the pandemic happened, was this. I got this from GMA, I think. So if you see, based on the Constitution, education should always, every year, take the highest share. So usually DepEd gets the highest share every year. But look at the government's current program. And this was not the levels before, in previous administrations. Notice public works and highways, as well as transportation. You add both, actually, that's higher than education. And DPWH, Public Works and Highways, and Department of Transportation, what do these two agencies do? They actually build infrastructure. And even if you don't read the news often, I'm sure you've heard this somewhere, build, build, build. That's one of government's mantras in this current administration. Infrastructure. They want to build infrastructure. That's why you see, it gets the lion's share. Because if you combine public works and highways plus transportation, it's actually higher than education. Because the government now, this administration, compared to previous administrations, they now want to. Then they have been prioritizing infrastructure. More railways, transport, bridges, roads, hopefully better cities. Again, even if you link it to agriculture, infrastructure facilitates movement and trade. It connects things. It makes businesses happen. It creates economic activity. I won't ask you now because we're running out of time. I wanted to ask you this. So why is infrastructure build-up good? So if you read the NEDA piece, it increases economic activity directly and indirectly. What do you mean by directly? So if you have construction happening, then some sectors in the economy, let's say construction companies, they will be happy. They will have more economic activity. So there are those sectors that will really experience more economic output, more economic activity directly because of increase in infrastructure. So those making the construction of cement companies, for example, equipment companies use infrastructure. That's direct. they will directly benefit. Pag indirect naman, infrastructure naman, they say it facilitates movement. Kasi factories, for example, I need to sell my goods in Laguna to Manila or to somewhere else. If I have better roads, then it means my business, my manufacturing business is better. So it's indirect because I don't necessarily make more money because I'm in the construction industry. No, but the infrastructure that's built helps me, helps my company better. No? Helps me sell goods better. Agribusiness also, it helps me. If I have more infrastructure, it makes my agri-produce, it makes me sell better outside. It connects me more. So indirect yun. And they're saying, they've done the math, they're estimating an additional 1.3 trillion contribution to GDP by 2020. And don't forget the jobs. No? There are direct and indirect jobs that will happen, that will be created because of infrastructure build-up. So they're estimating 1.8 million jobs. Again, both directly, those who will have jobs in the construction industry, and both that will have jobs as a result of the economic sectors that are helped. So, yung multiplier effect, we'll discuss that later when we go to stimulus. So they're saying, the infrastructure really, and that's true for not just the Philippines, that's true for any country. Infrastructure buildup really has a lot of very good benefits to the economy. All right, we'll discuss that next time, next Tuesday. I want to end this session with fiscal policy. So we've talked about revenues, we've talked about spending. You can actually be deliberate when you set a taxation regime or when you spend. So when in terms of the revenue side, in terms of taxation, you can be deliberate when you create your tax systems. One is you can shape behavior. So if you've known this, they've actually jacked up the taxes for cigarettes, for liquor, and even for sugar beverages under the trade law. Because they want to disincentivize behavior and at the same time get more money from those still patronizing those goods. So taxation policy, the kinds of taxes, can actually help shape behavior. They can actually disincentivize bad behavior, unhealthy behavior. In the case of, let's say, sin taxes, sugar taxes. At the same time, it can also incentivize behavior. So, for example, the the ones assigned to create, the way you structure taxes can also attract investments. Kasi for example, some local governments and some economic zones, they actually say, if you invest in us, if you set up your company here, you will not pay taxes for the next 5 years versus other companies who are paying 30%. And that's been happening already. So that's another way by which fiscal policy in terms of taxation can be shaped purposively to incentivize investment, for example, from outside. And that usually happens when there's, it's a less developed area wanting to pull in investments. And the last is government spending. Taxation is revenue side. What about government spending side? Si Keynes was famous for saying this particular. And the government should pay people to dig holes in the ground and then fill them up. Usually, fiscal stimulus, government spending, happens when the economy is in trouble. When GDP is shrinking, when it's bad, and for example, in this pandemic, what they're saying is, government, you should spend. Why did Keynes say this? It's wasteful if you think about it. But here I'll talk about multiplier effect, and I can elaborate more next week. He was basically saying, if government spends, that spending, let's say government provides cash transfers. It has a multiplier effect because the family that gets that 4-piece, example natin 4-piece, gets money, they buy goods. When they buy goods from some shop. The shop owner then gets money. If that shop thrives, then the family that derives income from that, they can also pay for other things. So it's a multiplier effect, no? It's a domino effect. No? If I give you cash income, you spend it, businesses benefit, etc., etc. So domino effect. That's basically what Keynes is talking about. So sometimes, especially when the economy is in a slump, Keynes has been advocating for stimulating the economy. More spending, you spend on this, you give people money here so that they can stimulate businesses, etc., etc. And if you read the news about the stimulus that government has been providing, that's the objective, to stimulate spending. Although the problem with that right now in the pandemic is people are scared. No, you give them money, but still it's hard for them to go out and spend because again they're scared of contracting the disease. So that is the essence of the multiplier effect. This is wasteful, but the point he was trying to make was you pay people money. So when people have money, businesses will also benefit because people will spend that money on something. And the shopkeepers will be happy. So it's sort of a good cycle. It's a multiplier effect. And I can repeat this particular thing next week. I really have to run. I have another appointment at 7. Again, if you have questions, you can email me. My consultation hours. And again, next week we'll still meet one last time. I'll close this discussion and finish with debt, and then the last 2 subtopics, which are more simple. So debt, taxation, as well as agricultures, they're both really the more complex topics among them. So I'm sorry I have to run, and it's been 2 hours already. You guys might need to do something else. So thank you very much. Sorry to cut this session off. If you need me to elaborate more on other topics, please feel free to email me. Say, sir, please repeat this particular concept next week. Okay? Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.